To approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Okay, I've just changed my agenda here. Okay. The resolution to accept and approve the quarterly investment report. Monty?
Madam President, members of the board, you have before you the quarterly report for the investment for the period ending June 30th. We had $53.2 million in our investment portfolio at the beginning of the quarter. We had deposits of $7.8 million. We had withdrawals of $11 million, leaving a balance of $49.9 million. Our tax pool is earning 0.03%. Your second report is the RTR report. I do want to bring to your attention, we started out with the quarter with $1,750 million. We had deposits of $1 million, and then we had withdrawals is actually a positive of $17 million, and I'll explain that in just a moment, leaving $1,770 million. If you look in the second bracketed group where it says this quarter under withdrawals, you'll see a positive $38,890,000. What that was is that there was a TxDOT had incorrectly credited our account for that month, and so they're doing an adjustment. They have taken part of that out, but then they'll take the remainder of that out in the next month. So it's just a timing difference on that correction. Sometimes those things do happen. Generally, there are smaller amounts. This was a larger amount, but I did want to bring that to your attention. So with that, the return from the state comptroller was 0.3%. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Approval?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Morris, a resolution authorizing the consultant contract for completion of the Dallas Love Field Airport survey.
Madam President, and Congress, you members of the board, item 3 is an action item on your agenda. About every 10 years or so, we do very detailed travel surveys on how individuals behave with regard to making trips and their trip lengths and distance and time and what modes of transportation they take. And we do that also for individuals who use our airports, because the trip lengths and trip distances to airports are very different than all other land uses we have in the region. People travel long distance, obviously, to get to airports, because you don't have very many of them. So the official surveys for the airports, both DFW and Love Field, will be next year, in August of 2015. You survey in your peak month. You want both business and leisure travel. So airports are surveyed in August. So next year will be the big surveys. It dawned on us a month or so ago that the Wright Amendment was coming in October 2014, and wouldn't it be nice if we understood how the distribution of arrivals to and from Love Field potentially changed as a result of the Wright Amendment. And if you don't do the survey before, you can never compare before and after conditions. So I met with the city manager of Dallas and asked him, would you permit us to go into Love Field? We don't have to go into DFW International Airport now. We'll do that in August next year. Could we go into Love Field and measure the arrivals, both business, leisure, distance, what cities people are coming from, and then measure the after conditions, because I predict we're going to have to make some transportation improvements to and from Love Field as a result of the Wright Amendment. He very much agreed. That was a great idea. I want to compliment the staff in short order to go out and get us some consultant assistance to help. So this is the survey for this year, in August, summertime now, to survey people going to and from Love Field, so we eventually can measure the before and after conditions of the impact of the Wright Amendment. Several firms submitted bids. As you know, I don't sit on the committees to select the firms, the staff does. This is a firm on an amount not to exceed $85,000. 75% is a disadvantage. 75% of the contract is a disadvantaged business enterprise. It's a woman-owned firm that was selected as the best group to do this. This is not necessarily the group that will do the surveys next summer. That'll go through its own competitive process because of the force of DFW International Airport. Our data staff and our aviation staff will help. We'll have aviation staff in the airport overseeing the survey. You have the details of the resolution there for you. Your transportation director requests approval to do the before survey at Love Field so we can measure the impact of the Wright Amendment on the ground transportation system as people will be going to that new aviation facility or redone aviation facility. And I'll stop there, Madam President, see if there's any questions.
Okay. I don't see any lights. I guess you did a good job, Mike. Thank you.
Move for approval.
Have a second?
Second.
Second, Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign? Unanimous. Thank you. I think, Mr. Morris, are you the next one also?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Remember, a broken watch has the correct time twice a day, so sometimes I get lucky in my presentations. It's not necessarily a good presentation sometimes. It is. This particular item is to permit us to move forward and purchase transit vehicles. These are often for the smallest of transit operators within the region. This is not for the DARTs and the Ts, who have very capable people to do this. It is quite complicated to purchase transit vehicles under all the federal rules. To make sure we don't get dinged in any oversight responsibility, we find it easier just to go ahead and procure the vehicles ourselves on their behalf versus the magnitude of oversight necessary to purchase these. So this would be Catholic Charities and others who are moving ahead on their purchases. We aggregate them into these different groups. You see how they're all color-coded white as a way that if they're not being used, they can be moved to other transit properties. Jesse Huddleston's team implements these. They're all lift equipped, and there's 3 different sizes, so everyone has to pick one of these sizes, and then we go through the procurement process. So the bids were opened. To accomplish this initiative, you have a table that shows the different scores received by the different companies for each of the 3 different vehicles. It isn't just a low-cost bid. There's other qualifications related to it. In addition to price, one firm, Creative Bus Sales, was the winner of the light-duty bus and of the small vehicle, and a different company, National Bus Sales, was the winner of the vehicle you see there furthest to the right, the medium-sized vehicle. So we aggregated all the requests from all the very small transit and nonprofit organizations into these 3. It's a very cost-effective way to buy vehicles because we have economies of scale in this particular case, getting more competitive prices as part of the particular process. So section 1 of your resolution is for the 57 vehicles that you have in the first 2 groups, one by Creative Bus Sales. You have in section 2, the 11 vehicles for the National Bus Sales winner. And then you have to place a person in the manufacturing facility because of the Buy America requirements and making sure the components of the vehicle are correct. So in section 3, we have also hired outside expertise for $14,000 to be inside the manufacturing facilities when these vehicles are made to certify the Buy America provisions and to certify the options and elements that are included in these particular procurements during the manufacturing process. So that's in section 3. So with that, I will stop there and see if we have any questions with regard to these vehicles.
I do. Does this, because I know in our city we're using Handytran. Do you buy our buses?
Jesse, no.
No.
You buy your own vehicles.
Okay. Well, but is it true, I mean, is the funding that's being helped, lowered through, because we know we're being cut off from federal, it doesn't impact these
No,
people either?
the Regional Transportation Council will fund your particular vehicle, so you're qualified to do it. So our funding will go to you, and we're working on,
Yeah,
as you know, you're losing your operating
yeah.
cost and the legislation that we helped draft with Congressman Frost. That legislation, as you know, is now over in MAP 21. So when the Regional Transportation Council selects projects, in the case of DART, the money is sent to DART. In the case of the T, it's sent to the T. In the case of you, you're qualified at it, it's sent directly to you. Below a certain threshold, Jesse retains the revenue. The money in this case is coming to the board, and the board goes through the procurement for the smaller. They're almost all nonprofits, aren't they, Jesse? Nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
But your folks are very good at this.
Yeah.
Now, if they wanted to, they could always send them, but you may not be in one of these 3 classes of vehicles, or you may wish them to be painted a certain color, where we wish them to be more vanilla-like, so if they are no longer needed, we will be moving them around the region to someone who needs those vehicles.
Okay.
This isn't a trick question, it's very technical, but what shade of white is it?
It is non-pearl white. There is no sparkle or eggshell. And don't say it looks like a prison vehicle or anything. So, sometimes you can wrap them and put decals on them after they come out, but Jesse and I were on a statewide committee, and one way to buy vehicles at lower prices is to have different degrees of white in the procurement process.
Go ahead, Larry.
I guess it's just the PowerPoint, colored it wrong, you know. It's a gray white, charcoal white.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next,
I'm on board.
and second, and what was? Okay. Next, we have the resolution approving the FY 2015 solid waste funding implementation project. Edith?
Thank you, Madam President and Board. Today we're bringing an item back to you. We brought the first call related to the solid waste program implementation funds back in May to you. And we've been through the process to create a second call. And that's what I'm here again today, is to get your permission for moving forward with the second call projects. Just as a recap, our solid waste program funding is based on a 2-year cycle. We have about $1 million per year available to us for a total of 2.1 million for the 2 years. Of that, we allocate 40% roughly for the coordination of the regional program, and then 60% for the implementation projects funding. I want to recognize Sandra and Marvin in the back and Tamara for their hard work. They've been working with the Resource Conservation Council through a lot of this process to get us to the point where we can receive the scoring for the applications that have come in and help guide everyone through the applications. And so you'll see a kind of a timeline of what we've been through, what we still have to do. Today we're at the July 24th, we're requesting your approval for the second call for projects, and then we'll, assuming we receive that approval, we'll forward that on to TCQ for their state approval. Following that, we'll have the interlocal agreements for the second calls. We've already started the interlocals for the first call that you approved in May. And then we'll need the projects completed by the end of June of 2015. These are the projects that scored above 70 by the Resource Conservation Council. As you can see, we've got a total here of $539,000, which was the balance that was left of the available funds following the first call projects that were selected by the RCC. During a discussion that we had with the council, they determined that they would like us to proceed with 2 regional-based programs included with the projects. One would be an update to the solid waste management plan, along with an update to the website for the time to recycle part of the program, as well as an inventory map digitizing of the closed landfills. The second, and they wished us to allocate $100,000 of the funds for that purpose. The second regional project that they asked us to proceed with was the regional recycling campaign. So we will be, for the 16 counties, we will be pursuing a campaign to promote recycling that will, the Resource Conservation Council will be a heavy participant in these regional programs, and so that's what they chose to do with the remainder of the funds. So that's the total, which added to the first call that we brought to you in May would total the available funding for the implementation projects. And again, that's a reimbursement-based funding. So as the expenditures are spent on the projects, we receive invoices from those communities that they've paid, and then we submit those through the state and get the funds back. So that is all of the presentation. Do you have any questions?
This is just curiosity, I guess, for me. Are there any cities in our region that do not recycle? Do you know?
I would ask Sandra. She's kind of shaking her head no. We believe that there may be some, really rural communities that may not have certainly as robust programs as urban areas, but we believe everybody in some way recycles.
I think there's a level level different, but I think everybody is involved.
Okay, that's good. I'm just all of a sudden understanding. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
So I had a question about the collection box or the bin or the trash can for recycling. Is that changing? A lot of cities have the rolling carts, and other cities have little carry bins.
Sure, the communities choose, they choose their waste provider. And so there's a number of private waste providers out there available. And so they choose their waste provider. And a lot of times the choice of that provider determines what's available for choices for the recycled container.
Okay, thanks.
Good. If there are no other questions, I'll ask for a motion.
Second.
Dr. Marshall and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are down to appointments under item 6. It's the appointments to the executive board standing committees. I think all of you got them in your packet, your names, and I presume everyone accepts the position.
If you didn't call screaming, you accept the position, is that what?
Yeah, I'm saying nobody calls, so you're all there. So do we don't need to do anything with that explanation. Yeah, it's just information. So everybody knows where they are. I know you'll all do a great job. Then we add the 7, the 2014 appointments to the Emergency Preparedness Planning Council. Molly, I think you have that.
Good afternoon. If you guys remember, the Emergency Preparedness Planning Council is the body of elected officials that help to advise this body on emergency preparedness issues and oversees my department. We currently have 2 vacancies, one in the population range from 5,000 to 14,999, and one in the 30,000 to 49,999. Some of the seats are permanent seats based on the categories, counties, and certain city sizes. The other ones rotate about every 3 years. And so what happens normally, either folks don't get reelected, we get vacancies, and so this is what we have here. In the first population category, we only had 1 nomination, so that one we are recommending Martin B. Woodruff with Decatur, and you'll see his application and background there. with that information. The second seating, we got 3 nominations, and we are recommending Nancy Yingling, specifically because I believe it was Lancaster has recently held a spot in that, actually they just vacated their spot. And we like to rotate between the jurisdictions that are eligible in that category. And then Bedford was a late acceptance, and so we weren't actually able to accept that one, which would give us Capel. We base the recommendations on geographic diversity. We really try to make sure that we have a good spread from throughout the region, collectively on the council. If there's kind of a tie in that area, we go to historic representation. So if the city or a jurisdiction has had a lot of representation throughout the years, that will weigh heavily to give somebody else an opportunity. And then finally, we look at that professional resume. And many times we get elected officials who have specific relevant experience to emergency preparedness or disaster response. And that really makes it a very useful experience. So with that, our staff recommendations are Martin B. Woodruff and Nancy Yingling.
I'll move forward. We could go back and approve item 6.
That was just, item 6 was just appointments and.
Yeah, but Ken and I are just discussing that. We do have a resolution, and it might be well.
Okay, so I asked, that's
I'll
all.
move approval of items 6 and 7.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Okay, that's all right. We did, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, we have that one. Now we're down to 7.
Move approval.
Second.
Stark, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. We are now to status reports, and those are on our Molly.
So every year you come here and you hear me talk about our regional public education campaign, the Know What to Do campaign. This is something that our region has put together that is specific to the threats in our area to really hopefully get the public and citizens and people involved in preparing for themselves and their family. We do have a lot of disasters here. We have a wide variety of disasters, and the common recommendation is that families need to prepare for 72 hours to be self-sustaining. They need to have a plan, and then they need to have a communications plan. So our committee has devised several materials to be able to help support that and educate folks. We've got, and I have some extra ones there in the back. Every year I hand out a whole bunch of swag, so most of y'all have this already, but for the new folks, I gave y'all some of the new stuff. We've got coloring books, we've got lots of things like that. September is National Preparedness Month, and FEMA will be doing a huge campaign called Preparathon, and it's going to be coming out, and there's going to be a lot of attention and material on this. I wanted to get this on your radars now so that you and your staffs would have a little bit of time to be able to plan whatever events that you were having internally. I know Wildflower Festival and other places actually work there giving out some of the Know What to Do stuff at the time. The Know What to Do campaign, we've really recently shifted from providing a lot of swag to do more campaigning kind of things. You'll see billboards that are out on most of the major highways. I believe they've purchased PSAs on radio stations, so you'll hear Know What to Do. And then also in movie theaters, so you know when you go to your movie early and there's those things in advance to really help promote this, this idea. You know, people think that there's going to be somebody who can come save them in a major disaster, and with about 25,000 first responders for about 7 million people, you can do the math, we just don't have enough people. And what happens in disasters is that neighbors help neighbors, you get emergent volunteers. So this really will help them be a lot more prepared for this moving forward. So with that, I'll answer any questions about the Know What to Do program, and I hope that you will take this information back and support it in your jurisdictions and throughout the region.
Good, thank you.
And I have lots of pencils, bookmarks, and coloring books.
Molly, are the materials going to be distributed to our emergency management coordinators who are members of the EPPC at the meetings, or how's the literature stuff going to be distributed?
We have a website where all of the materials, we have videos in Spanish and in Vietnamese and in American Sign Language. Everything is basically posted on the website there. We have a limited amount of materials that are actually cached throughout the region, so people can go and do that. We have about 5 or 6 booths that you can rent out. You don't rent them, but you just can borrow them. And tablecloths to be able to do that kind of stuff. We just don't have a big cache like we used to, where we used to have all these books and materials and stuff, because they're really trying to spend it more, the funding more on the overarching campaign and less on the printing materials. If your jurisdiction is interested, you can order the materials and put your own logos and brochures on them. All the templates are there, everything is ready. So, and it's all done through this website, so we can definitely hook your staff up and help them if they want to do some stuff. And there's some pretty innovative things that they've developed with the Know What to Do campaign on there that you could, it's relatively low cost.
But you are in contact with all the emergency.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're very well aware of it, and they can help get the word out that it's available at a website. And these are the type of subject matter that are covered.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure I was just saying, maybe it's because I'm on EPPC and aware of the new campaign, but I've seen a lot of evidence of it. You know, I see it from time and I go, oh wow, you know, there it is. So
That's our billboard.
yeah, exactly. There's our billboard. So I think you're doing a great job of getting it out, and I know our staff is using materials and getting it out there. So it's a lot of good information.
It's a tough message to get across, you know, if people have to decide between buying bread and buying an emergency kit, that's not really a thing, and it's not always fun to think about. So trying to get that messaging to make people take this action and have these conversations. We're really starting to target a lot of the children, to be able to take that message home through the schools. I believe we've even done some curricula that some of the teachers can adopt and be able to teach some of the science and things. Because it is pretty interesting, you know, kind of information, but really what we want is actionable behavior where people are having the conversations and having the kids. And I hope you all have your kit ready to go with all your water, and we do, right? And your dog food and your medicines and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good present for you to give to your family. You know, have starter kits for Christmas. I mean, that's a good. My parents would. That's probably why I'm in emergency management. They gave me weather radios and all sorts of other things like this when I was in high school.
That explains some things.
You were prepared early. Yeah. Okay. Okay, David.
All right,
On the
Madam
proposed
Chairman,
legislation?
members of the board, I'm going to try to quickly go through. I've got 13 slides, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on each one of them. But I wanted to highlight some of the things you may have heard that have been in the news lately. And a lot of credit for developing this material goes to Kay Odell, my workforce development manager. Kay, raise your hand so I can see you. And this is a constantly evolving source of information, because this is an 800-page bill that Congress passed. And I don't know if you heard, but the House passed it like 425 to 10, and the Senate was like 95 to 3. So it was a real bipartisan, bicameral effort. So we've been operating under WIA, which was created in 1998, and it had never been reauthorized, although Congress continued to fund it all those years. So we now have a new bill, new act to operate under, and we're going to hit some of the highlights, but it's constantly evolving. We have shared this with our other Metroplex counterparts. Judge Whitley, we shared it with Judy and Lori in Dallas County just yesterday. So, but it's kind of, we're all looking at it. It's 800 pages, and so we're all going to be discovering little bitty things in there, because it's always the devil's in the details. So let's see if we can step through this pretty quick. Again, it has basically 4 sections: the job training related services, improving literacy, matching assistance into the one-stop, and then employment related service with disabilities. And I'll just caveat this by saying some of the things you're going to see in here we are already doing in Texas, because we have been on the forefront of centralizing, bringing all these services under TWC, under what we call the one-stop concept. But there are a lot of other areas across the country that have not, so this is going to be new to a lot of folks. So basically, it maintains the structure of WIA and the funding structure. There's no block grant. They're not just going to send a bunch of money down to the state. It's still going to be siloed by programs, but it does eliminate some programs, and there's some of them. One of the ones we've used effectively has been the community-based job training grants. So those independent, so they would carve out money at the federal level for these programs. So they're not doing that anymore. It's going to be all in the regular funding. Now, during the first 2 years, there's automatic designation of local workforce development, it's LWDAs, that were in existence under WIA. So that's our Texas system. We have 28 local workforce boards and local workforce development areas. And then after 2 years, there's a lot more of some teeth in this to look at the performance of boards and make decisions about whether they should continue to be a board area. So that's something that's relatively new. All of us in the Metroplex are meeting our measures and doing well. We have great fiscal responsibility, so We don't anticipate any consolidation of workforce board areas, but that possibility exists, that is created in this act. And then this bottom one, we already do this in the Metroplex. The 3 boards are members of what's called the Regional Workforce Leadership Council. We just had a meeting yesterday, and so we've been doing regional planning for well over 10 years in the Metroplex, but there's other areas of the state that have not, and other areas of the country that don't do that. So, okay, our board, as you know, the chief elected officials vary a little bit depending on how you're set up. In Dallas and Tarrant County, it's the county judge and the 2 mayors of the largest communities. In our area, it's our 14 county judges, like Judge Horn and the other Judge Horn. And then we have 6 mayors that are mayors of communities over 100,000. So we actually have 20 CEOs, and they appoint our board members. So that kind of stuff doesn't change. It still maintains a business majority, but it requires the businesses that are represented on the board to be in demand industries and have employees. Higher education and training activities, members to represent economic and community development, and it lowers the minimum number from 25 to 17. Now we currently on our board we can go up to 38. Our minimum is 25, and we stay around 32. I think Dallas and Tarrant may be close to that. Local plans under WIA, you can see there what was required. Under WIOA, it changes a little bit from 5 years to a 4-year plan, and a mandatory review every 2 years by the CEOs or the chief elected officials. And it must allow the state unified plan, include description of economic conditions in the region, and then regionally aligning core programs. Again, this is something we're all doing in Texas, so this is not new for us. It's going to be new for some other folks. Focus on regional cooperation, and then there's specifically a regional plan, which we have, regional service strategies, implementation of sector initiatives. Again, for us in the Metroplex, these are all things that we've been doing through our WLC. So again, this is going to have some impact for others around the state and the country. We're kind of there in the Metroplex. So WIOA authorized appropriations all the way to 2020, but that's not guaranteed funding. We're always going to be at the mercy of Congress when they are doing their appropriations as to what funding levels we're going to be subjected to or given. And, you know, with the budget caps and some of the sequestration things, we think it's very unlikely that we would ever be funded at the authorized level. It would be something a little less than that. There's some changes to the state grant allotments. Of course, the money comes out of Congress. It gets allotted first across the country to the states based upon a number of factors. So there's some changes in some of those. And then once it gets to the state level, they do the same type of thing. They allocate it across the state to 28 local workforce boards based upon some of the factors. One of this last bullet right here is we've had the option to move money between adult and dislocated, but it was limited to 20%. And so they're raising that now to 100%, subject to approval of the governor. What that allows us the capability to do is, okay, going forward, you know, for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been tough. We had a lot of dislocated worker funds because we've got a lot of dislocated workers. If in your board area going forward, the need is not there for that dislocated funding, we can move it into adult to help the people that qualify for that program. I won't hit on these very hard, but there's some eligibility changes. And basically what they've done is widen the scope of eligibility, particularly for youth, include if they're on a free or reduced lunch, and or residents in a high poverty area as part of eligibility for low income. They also, if you remember when we did the ARRA funding in 2009, 2010, they expanded the age bracket for youth up to 24. Well, they've kept that, or they've put that in WIOA, but there's 2 groups. There's in-school youth and out-of-school youth. And they are focusing a lot of the resources, 75% now has to be spent on out-of-school youth. So those are kids that are out of school, don't have their GED or a high school diploma, so they're moving the focus. We've been focusing as a board area on that for a long time. Now it's a national focus. Changes in performance accountability. As you know, we're measured a lot from DOL to TWC. This is going to be some changes in kind of the timeline for all this stuff. Is DOL has to go through a period of public notification, rulemaking, and then policy direction, and then it has to come to the state, and then we'll have TWC overlaying the state version of that. So we really don't expect to start seeing a lot of the really finite direction that we're very used to until mid to late next year. Here's the youth training one that's at 75%. And it also requires 20% of funds support paid and unpaid work experience. So that's how we get youth into being exposed to the work environment and get them where they can get a job. Business services and employment-related training. We've always done a really good job with our employment-related training. We won an award a couple of years ago from the state for that. So this focuses on that. OJTs, internships, and apprenticeship. A lot more focus in this area. So we'll be working, we would like to expand our OJTs a lot, so we'll be looking at that. And that's a quick run through an 800-page bill that a lot still has to be determined about. But if you have any questions, Kay is here. And actually what we've done inside our organization here, Kay has divvied that up section by section to the different groups in our management team. So it's kind of a divide and conquer. So we're going to be continually working through it. We'll get feedback from Dallas. We'll get feedback from Karen. We'll get feedback from other boards. And so this picture will just keep getting more and more granular. We'll get as we go on. And then we'll start getting direction from DOL and TWC next year. So, any questions?
I don't see any, but thank you for your report. Thank you. I think we are down to the last of just miscellaneous items. Is there any old or new business?
Michael, thank you.
How about Ms. Michael Morris?
You did that on purpose.
Freight efficiency. No, I really wanted to hear it. Go, Michael.
Madam President, thank you very much. One of the items I do want to flag, when Ms. Wilemon was chairman of the Regional Transportation Council, one of the major places where staff, especially Dan Kessler, part of the transportation staff, was spent was all the land uses around the Joint Naval Air Station to make sure we have a future Joint Naval Air Station in case of another BRAC commission. And of course, Lockheed Martin will only stay there if there's a runway, and we need a Joint Naval Air Station to make sure there's a runway. So it was really cool last month. Dan was recognized by Captain Miller and Ms. Wilemon being the RTC chair during the time frame of all this work. And I just noticed what's on the wall is the signed Blue Angels certificate that Captain Miller gave to Dan to remind all of us that a Joint Naval Air Station is critical to national security, but it's also critical to the economic development, job creation. So I wanted to touch on that after David's response that lots of high-end manufacturing jobs at Lockheed Martin and all the peripheral companies necessary to drive that industry. We're blessed to have that there. We're blessed to be part of a team to make sure we can have that in the future. Your item 10 is a status report. We don't need your action. We came before you a couple of years ago with a competition between vendors on how to best communicate to the goods movement, trucking community on lowering emissions and fuel consumption by advancing aerodynamic and new types of tires on trucks. And you've seen those on the freeway. The company we hired was part of a national consortium. They were doing great in our region, but nationally they've gone out of business, so we no longer have our vendor to perform this function. just realize just for a moment, trucks, over-the-road trucks, heavy-duty diesel trucks, it's about 5% of our VMT and close to 50% of our emissions and energy consumption. So by focusing on this 5%, we have huge potential gains. And remember, we also have overweight trucks, which we shouldn't have because that's part of our maintenance problem. So we've recommitted a whole communication plan with the goods movement community, and Dan's created an internal technical committee within our department made up of the goods movement companies within the region. So as a result, we're moving from one storefront that was on Interstate 20, I believe, and we're now going to take this function internally, and we're going to spread it across lots of people who are touching the goods movement community. So Dan Kessler's team will be coordinating directly with goods movement companies. Chris Klaus's team, who deals with air quality, will be doing that as well. The marketing team is developing materials. So we think it'll be much more cost effective to bring a person in-house and to coordinate with all the other things we're already doing with goods movement. And instead of waiting for trucks to come to a center next to a truck stop, we're going to knock on the door of all the trucking companies within the region and communicate the importance of some small investment in your truck and trailer will pay huge dividends in reducing your fuel and operating costs, which will have huge benefits with regard to reduction in energy consumption and reduction in emissions, and continue to bring the message directly to the community. So it was a pilot to begin with. I think it would have been successful if the company had stayed in business. We're short on purpose. We have not funded about 24 of our positions because we don't have a bill like David has. Our transportation bill is somewhere between a dream and a pipe dream right now in Washington on transportation. Our bill's up this summer. We're lucky to get a 6-month extension to December, it looks like. So because of our need to carry over a lot of revenue for our staff in case this is to occur, I'm not specifically requesting an action item for a staff person because I'm short several staff persons for other budgetary reasons related to our lack of federal legislation. So I think it'll be much more cost effective. We will hire a person, but we think we can communicate directly to this industry much more effectively through lots of our different programs we have within the department versus waiting for someone to happen to stop at this one particular place. So I will stop there. Madam Chair, thank you very much for your leadership as RTC chairman, and the recognition that Dan got with regard to that was kind of cool. And then I think this is a much more cost-effective way to communicate to our trucking industry by going door to door within the region and talking to them directly as partners, seeing where their needs are in transportation, and also seeing what technologies can help them with the implementation of their programs. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, that was quite a good deal when the captain came to our RTC meeting. Also, Michael, I know that there's a pilot program we've talked about in technology that you're talking about. When we talked about the people movers and the pilot program at General Motors, I know that's being implemented as far as I know. And are there other areas where that same thing can happen with industries where that will literally take trucks? It's short distance, but it'll still help the
Yeah, I think that's a great example where General Motors assembly plant is the only General Motors assembly plant in North America whose vehicles don't end at the railhead. So they have very expensive trailers and very, I think it's $3 to $4 million a year in expense to move them a half a mile from the west side of 360 to the east side of 360 at the railhead. So the RTC is advancing a people mover system whose test track will be between GM and that railhead. So we will be procuring engineering services to move out on that shortly. And it has the dual benefit of being able to move vehicles right off the assembly line onto carriages, basically the bottom halves of the people mover vehicles, directly over to the railhead is the hope. GM's on board 100%. And some of their savings, they want to pile back into the construction and operations. As you know from your workshop, they're a full onboard partner, which is a nice public-private partnership. But I think there's lots of opportunities. We're looking at portable weigh in motion scales to potentially get to police enforcement, because there's a lot of truck companies that follow the rules and are not overweight. And we hear all the time, we hate competing with businesses that are overweight, because it gives them an unfair competition. So maybe more enforcement to not have overweight trucks reduces tremendously the cost of our maintenance on our roadway system. So we're now having conversations about, is there a way we can get more weigh in motion and or portable scales in the hands of police and sheriffs as a way to enforce some of these rules. Because you're going to see more restrictions on trucks on the inside shoulders to move the trucks over to the right and save those for cars. TxDOT and RTC are moving out of more of those. More planning. At some point, we may have dedicated truck lanes in certain corridors. So, in high commuter corridors, you may have HOV lanes. And in high goods movement corridors, you may have dedicated truck lanes. These type of things are part of the future. And as you heard us say before, DFW is the largest inland metropolitan region without access to the sea. So paying attention to goods movement like this is trying to do, we think is a cost-effective way to proceed. And when you talk to them, it isn't just a single initiative. We want to talk to them about where their bottlenecks are within the region to see if there's ways we can help them on poorly designed jug handles where trucks have to cross over, the median. There's other things we can do. And I think when you have a comprehensive communication, it'll just be that much better than how it would have been done previously. Any other questions for me?
I think also, just the fact that Panama Canal is going to be finished, we're going to have more truck traffic. Obviously, it's those ports.
And with 3 million more people coming to the region,
Yeah.
you're going to have more truck traffic.
I always think it's so important that the child life fund will never have enough funds to get the efficiency and effectiveness out of what we have. It's deserving what we have to maintenance and keeping vehicles off the road that is struck. Roadway. It's really going to be the way of the future. Michael, I think the department and state are really focusing on that.
Any other comments?
We're adjourned.
I have a motion to adjourn. I think we finished all this. And so if there is no objection, we adjourn. And now I'll call to order the board meeting of the North Central Texas Council of Governments Foundation.
Yes, ma'am, we are also about 013C organization. The board of the COG is the board of that organization. We formed it many years ago in order to enable foundations, perhaps even individuals, who want to help us with some of our programs to be able to do so and have the proper way to take tax credit that they will need or show the income tax implications of having given to us, even though we are a quasi-governmental operation in a political subdivision. That's really not sufficient for the foundations as they go about how they have to account for their contributions and donations. So at this point, our bylaws require that we have an annual meeting. You are attending the annual meeting of the foundation. We know of no grants or any requests for funds that we'll be making in the future, but that's not to say that we won't. When we do, we will reassemble as the foundation, give you an opportunity to review the applications that are being made and to finally determine if we go forward with those type applications. So with that, this last year, we've had our meeting. At one point had names of individuals who were authorized to sign contracts and do other administrative or ministerial duties. Determined that a lot of those people were no longer with us, and why did we do that in the first place? So we designated by position rather than by name, people authorized to do so. We made one grant application last year, and it was not funded. So that was activity last year, and we'll see what holds forth as we go into the next year. That, there's no questions. I have no further foundation.
Yeah, I think we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming in this time.
Yeah, if you would